Well, thank you very much, Aftar, and I'm delighted and honored to introduce my dearest friend, Hooshmand, who tonight will be giving us some insight into the role of faith in solving economic problems. Hooshmand is an academic economist, not communist, economist. He got his PhD from a joint collaboration between York, St. John's, and Leeds universities. He has written several books, mainly on ethical economics. He has delivered talks and presented papers on economics and related subjects at numerous international academic conferences. His idea of the Baha'i-inspired model of economic sustainability has become attractive to academia. Hooshmand has worked as a lecturer of economics for more than 25 years in several universities, mainly in the West Indies and the UK. He is currently a faculty member at the Wilmette Institute in the US and an academic member of the Baha'i Institute for Higher Education in Iran. He also offers an enterprise training program for the refugees coming to Scotland, all on a voluntary basis. He married and left Iran in 1975 and lived in Bangladesh, Canada, and island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines before moving to the UK in 2001. He lived in New York for 13 years. Currently, he lives with his family in Glasgow, Scotland. And of course, we had been blessed by him being he and his wife being here for 13 years, and some of you obviously know them quite well. So without any further ado, I pass it on to Hooshmand.
Well, thank you very much, Dariush. Thank you for this introduction. And I have to say that I was supposed to come to York and be with you and stay with you and have your food at your home. But because of this situation of COVID-19, I am here with you from distance, and still we are close in our heart and minds. As it was mentioned, we were in York from 2001 all the way to 2015. That's about 13, 14 years. We are in Glasgow now for the last 5 years. And in York, actually, my wife and I were active members of 2 interfaiths. One was the City of York Interfaith, which is this group that you are. And also we were the faith advisors of York St. John University Interfaith from its very inception, from 2005 for 9 years. So we have a lot of memories from York, especially with interfaith groups. So although my subject tonight is the role of faith in solving economic problems, but if you allow me, I'm going to share some of my memories of York, especially with 2 interfaiths of the City of York and York St. John University. So let me share with you, because this presentation will be with some PowerPoints, which it takes a moment to fix it. Okay. Yes. This is the This is the Interfaith Committee of York St. John University, started in 2005 with members of all major faiths. This picture is taken at the university. For me, the initiation of York St. John University is significant as a church-based institution because, as we know, the first organized interfaith group, also initiated by the Christianity in Chicago in 1893, called the Parliament of the World Religion, and often regarded as the birth of the interfaith movement. This was the first organized international gathering of religious leaders. In modern time, however, the realization is that religious freedom is universal human rights. Professor Diane Wilcox was the first vice chancellor who was very supportive of interfaith. He was actually one of the founders of interfaith at York St. John University. Here you see her with Trish, who is among us, and my wife and myself, and also the third vice chancellor, Dr. Karen Stanton. Anyhow, the York St. John University, as a church-based university, was very supportive of interfaith group and interfaith activities. The idea at both interfaith groups, I mean York St. John University and the city of York, was that we should not make interfaith a place for teaching our religions and expecting others to join our faith. These activities should be an occasion for real friendship and creating love and unity among ourselves. And this is one of the occasions that I will explain now in a moment, that this is a festival, a Rezvan festival, which is supported by all faith groups, and actually all faiths helped us to organize this festival. These events are not the activity or planned by one faith organization. It was a teamwork, and every faith contributed towards it. One very interesting thing happened at York St. John University Interfaith was that for every religious ceremony, all faiths, including faith advisors, used to help in organizing an event. For example, I remember during Ramadan, as you know, Muslim fasting period, which will be soon, one day we used to go to the mosque and serve food at the time of breaking the fast. Of course, the food was prepared by Muslim families, and we used to help serving our dear beloved Muslims. And I hope this tradition is still going on. I don't know about that. Or Rezvan Festival, which is the most important Baha'i festival, all faiths advisors used to help. For me, these are beautiful examples of uniting faiths. This is a picture of the Baha'i festival, Baha'i Rezvan Festival at the university, organized by actually interfaith groups. All interfaith advisors were helping us to organize this meeting. At the same time, having some theological and social dialogue to remove certain misunderstandings that existed among followers of different faiths. Book exhibition by all faiths at the York St. John University. And this is an annual activity of the City of York Interfaith Group. The idea was to get together and celebrate unity in diversity. I see here Trish, one of the planners. And of course, with lots of different kind of food from different countries. This was one of the most important of these events. We were there for its 25th anniversary. Now it should be more than 30 years. You should know better than me about that. And of course, completing my PhD and getting my degree at the York St. John, at York Minster actually, from Archbishop of York and the Chancellor of University, Mr. John Santomo, and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Karen Stanton. So I thought it will be good to share some of my memories and some of the pictures taken during those days. Of course, I have hundreds of pictures taken during those 13, 14 years, and maybe I should send to Dariush and others to York to share with other friends. Okay, and now let me start with saying that about the role of the faiths in solving economic problems, that we are living in an extraordinary time and very chaotic at the same time, with one common message that the whole world is crying out for help. There is uncertainty, there is pandemic crisis, anxiety, and fear, and at the same time, the realization that humanity is ready for a change. And despite of geographic distances, I think with the current virus pandemic, we can all feel in the same boat and on the same planet, finally. Living among us, both the poorest nations and the wealthiest nations of the world for more than 4 decades, I witnessed inequality in standard of living among the rich and the poor. It was clear experiences and observations that such extremes and their effects on people are of great significance in understanding and redefining human well-being. The conditions of living disorder I witnessed among these nations needed to be addressed by examining its causes and symptoms. I was interested to learn how my academic knowledge as an economist and the teachings of the faiths, all faiths, would respond to such challenges. And in my case, being a member of the Baha'i community. It is important, however, to note that the faiths, and I'm talking about all faiths, are not a form of economic systems, and that prophets of God never claimed to be technical economists. The scriptures provide a framework to guide economists to use moral and spiritual principles when they are making new models for the economy. Any reasonable economic system of the future should consider the dual nature of human being, both spiritual and material. The main focus of scriptures are the application of spiritual teachings to solve economic problems. And this will be my main focus in this presentation. So we do need to create a harmonious relationship between spirituality and economics to solve economic problems. They should join together to be reconciled. They are partners and not enemies, and together they make miracles. Most people think of economics as related to money, to wealth, to finance, to wages, cost and expenditure, to goods and services, and similar things. For me, this is a narrow understanding of the subject of economics. And I will explore this idea further in a moment. Now, for this topic to become more meaningful, we need to redefine the two keywords of spiritual and economics. We need to redefine spirituality in a way that comprises the entire humanity, including those who for various reasons try to get distance from religion and consider themselves secular thinkers. In other words, they consider themselves spiritual, but not affiliated to any organized religion. Although for the members of different faiths, spirituality is closely connected to religion, but for the sake of this presentation, I am going to separate the spirituality from religion to include everyone, including those getting this distance from religion. The scripture view is that all humans are gifted with a higher nature, but it needs to be nurtured and developed. It is this all unifying function of spirituality that helps to resolve difficulties when we come face to face with problems. The belief in higher nature of human being also has a close correlation with the purpose of life for a believer. The purpose of life is not simply the satisfaction of one's own needs and enjoyment of material pleasures, but also involves a service to one's community and wider society. A similar interpretation of the concept of spirituality as a unifying factor is given by Professor David Hay, who was a professor of child psychology at Badee University in Scotland. According to him, secular thinkers and social scientists are able to recognize spirituality when they come face to face with problems. Therefore, spirituality has a unifying function, and it doesn't matter what kind of belief we are having, we recognize spiritual principles when we are facing problems. And I will mention a few examples about this in a moment. Now, to reconcile the viewpoints of people of faith and theologians and social scientists and secular thinkers, I have developed a working definition of spirituality that is attractive to all kinds of people and is more suitable when discussing a topic like the role of faith in solving economic problems. And this is the definition you see here in this slide. It says spirituality is the all-unifying agency for developing and interconnecting our life with the material world, with other people, the natural environment, and with the future generation beyond our human limitation. Now, this definition supports spirituality as all unifying agency stated by various scriptures in all faiths. It also supports views that spirituality is recognized when we come face to face with problems. It also supports the United Nations concept of economic sustainability and its three components, which are the well-being for this generation, well-being for the future generation, and preserving the environment. Now, for this kind of discussion, it is customary to begin with examples of economic problems and challenges we are facing. Well, technology has made this part easy for us. If we go online, we come across hundreds of examples of various types of economic problems. Let us look at some of the spiritual principles that are associated with economic problems. For example, the root cause of corruption is the absence of love and affection for others. The root cause of poverty is the lack of compassion and empathy and kindness. The root cause of unfair trade is the absence of fairness and goodness. The root cause of consumerism is the absence of caring and compassion and contentment and moderation. The root cause of strike by workers is the demand for justice. The root cause of environmental problems is the lack of caring and moderation. And the root cause of global financial crisis of both 1930 and 2008 was the absence of truthfulness and trustworthiness and honesty. So now that we have defined spirituality from a different perspective that include all humans, it doesn't matter what belief they have, we included that in that definition of spirituality. Now, we also need to define or redefine economics and its association with the concept of spirituality. The definition of economics have been, of course, evolved from 1776 with the writings of Adam Smith, Scottish professor and the father of economics, who considered human as economic man, to numerous contemporary views that relate economics to fairness, to justice, and human rights, and human capability. But the conventional definition of economics has also some relevance to this discussion that we are having tonight. The term economy comes from the Greek oikonomia, which means household management. In wider society, the household can be compared to a government that has responsibility for the management of a nation's resources for the benefit of the entire population. In the same way, a household ensures the management of the house and the well-being of all members. Another popular definition of economics that can be seen in most economic textbooks and has relevance to our discussion tonight is from Alfred Marshall. He writes in 1890, he writes, economics is the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. This is the definition in his book, Economic Principles, in 1890. Now, the ordinary or normal or useful or everyday business of life for most people should include the minimum standard of living as human rights, including sufficient food, clothes, shelter, health and education. However, things like poverty, like inequality, like increasing the gap between the rich and the poor, labor, child labor, consumerism, wastage of the earth's precious resources, and various types of negative externalities are examples of abnormality that affects the life of humans and the ecosystem. So we see that both religion and economics agree with the eradication of human suffering. Now, considering those definitions of economics and spirituality, I'm going to apply those definitions into some of the problems that we have and see how faiths or the concept of spirituality or the idea of economics that is associated with spirituality can solve some of the economic problems that we have today. Once again, for all faiths, it is the application of the spiritual principles that should make sense. The first one is a few examples of current crisis, and I just say a few words very briefly. The global financial crisis of 2008 led to the recognition of spiritual principles. It is now believed that the root cause of global financial crisis of 2008 was not money, but the absence of honesty, of trustworthiness, of truthfulness, and mismanagement of money in financial institutions. Another example is that the European economic crisis led to the recognition of a need for political unity among member states. The European leaders coming face to face with the recent financial and political crisis led them to realize that the root cause of problems is not the euro currency, but the self-interest of member states, mismanagement of money, and absence of political unity among themselves. Also, as social scientists come face to face with ecological problems, spiritual problems or spiritual principles are recognized. World leaders were invited by the UN and gathered several times to consult about environmental issues. They now agreed that international issues such as the environment require all nations to consult, to cooperate, to show respect, and to take off the planet Earth. They agreed that this requires a great deal of moral and spiritual maturity. And about the question of refugees, when the rich and developed countries faced with the current surge of refugees started to show a level of compassion and welcoming them to have a better life. They have realized a positive potential in refugees. With appropriate policies, this rich source of human capital can be harnessed with benefits for everyone. Also, coming face to face with the problem of poverty at the global level, the rich people and nations have recognized the need to show compassion and caring to bring the poor out of poverty. As a result, absolute poverty has declined by 500 million people in the past few decades. And according to the UN, it is expected to be eliminated totally by 2030. Of course, it all depends how the poverty is defined. Whether the intention is to eradicate poverty, which is wipe out totally, or to eliminate it, which means to just reduce it, or just to control it. It means keeping at the same level. Now, my second example is using the input-output model as an application for the role of faith and spirituality in solving economic problems. This model shows the process of converting inputs, which are mainly economic resources, to produce output, which are mainly goods and services. We can choose to use all the resources available to us to make those products that are destructive, harmful, and unnecessary to humans, to animals, and to nature. Or we can choose to use resources to produce products that are necessary, sustainable, and beneficial to all. Now, once spiritual principles such as truthfulness and trustworthiness and honesty and compassion is added to the process of transferring input into output, the choices of producing goods and services become constructive, useful, sustainable, and appropriate for human dignity. Now, for the input-output model to make sense, we have to agree that spiritual principles must be considered as another resource and be added to the input section. This can be one of the most effective ways of stopping wastage of the planet's precious resources. Within the last few months, wonderful things have happened that are signs of true altruistic nature of human being. And this is demonstrated by hundreds of business organizations as a part of transforming input into output based on spiritual and moral principles. I have gathered here a few examples that I like to share with you. For example, a number of tobacco companies are investing in research for the development of a vaccine for the coronavirus. A number of fashion designers are also investing in making personal protective equipment. A number of car manufacturers are making ventilators for hospitals. A number of five-star hotels have offered their kitchens to the small restaurants to use and stay in the market. And a number of hotels have also made their rooms available for the frontline workers so that they can protect their families by not going back home after their long shifts. So these and many other profit-made organizations and non-profit organizations have a positive impact on the world by contributing an enormous amount of their resources, both monetary and non-monetary, to help the present condition. So we see that the spiritual principles have applications, and it can be applied to our real world when we are facing problems. My other example is related to the importance of family with having features of both spiritual and economics. The use of the analogy of the family in economic activities is helpful, given the similarities between the features and structure of a family and those of economics. The family unit offers an ideal setting within which can be shaped those moral attributes that contribute to an appropriate view of economics. And I'd like to mention a few examples about this. For example, the partnership is one of the features of the family model. This is an approach based upon an explicit model of caring and helping process. It demonstrates how a partnership enables parents and children to overcome their difficulties and fulfill their goals more effectively. Also, the integrity of the family is based on mutual love, trust, service to others, and sacrifice for one another. These qualities are essential for the family to succeed Otherwise, the family would become dysfunctional and chaotic and will break apart. With these moral and spiritual principles, a family can function even with limited resources. Now, let's do some analysis of this idea of family. Looking at the similarities of the nature of the family unit and its relationship with the larger society, and also looking at those beautiful principles that are working within a family, the question we should ask is, why such beautiful principles are not working in the wider society? For example, in the family unit, with very limited resources, the weaker members of the family, mostly children, are under extreme care and protection. How come tonight that we are speaking here, over 1 billion people in the world go to the bed hungry? Or in the family unit, the resources are shared among the members of the family on the basis of equity. How come today, in the wider society, 80% of the world resources are in the hands of only 20% of population, and the gap is increasing daily? Another example. In the family unit, most activities are based on cooperation. How come in the wider society, it is based on aggressive and relentless competition? Or in the family unit, members sacrifice their own well-being for the happiness of other members of the family. How come in the wider society, it is based on self-interest and even worse, selfishness? Now, responding on these questions, and of course, each one of you may have a different view, a different response, but my understanding, friends, is that in the larger society, our activities and behaviors are based on models and systems that are working in the society, and they are mostly outdated. They are unreliable and defective. Another issue related to the subject of family is the role of children. Generally speaking, when we talk about economics, most people think that it is a university subject, or it is a subject that leaders of society and big organizations should talk about that. Without ignoring its importance at the university level and at the organizational level, I think some of the economic ideas have an important place at the family level to be discussed. I will just mention a few examples, but it requires actually a whole session to talk about this particular topic. For example, children must have some idea about the role and purpose of economics, which is about tools available to us to use them wisely for living a happy life. Children should become familiar and know, for example, the importance of savings, the importance of work, the relationship between income and expenditure. Children should have some idea about good cost and bad cost, and why bad costs are bad for the environment. The concept of money. Does money bring happiness? And what is happiness? What is the purpose of life? What is moderation? And why it should be exercised moderation at all aspects of life? And many, many other topics that are related to economics, and its actual place is in the family for parents and children to learn together. So these are a few examples. I don't want to expand too much on these items because we want to have time for discussion. But at the end, dear friends, I'd like to conclude this presentation by saying that although, like most of you, I am optimistic and hopeful about a better future, and I tried to show my optimistic view in this presentation, but I don't want to be too naive. Our world is going through a period of pregnancy. During the pregnancy, the woman's body is going through shaping and reshaping, which is very painful. Of course, I am a man and should not talk about the pain of pregnancy. I will not do really justice to it. But what I know is that during the pregnancy, there is a need for lots of love and care and attention, especially for women's loved ones. Therefore, people and nations have to do lots of adjustments to their lifestyle during this period of pregnancy. There are a number of gaps that need to be filled, including education gap, including equal opportunity gap, productivity gap, wealth gap, resource allocation gap, and digital gap. These and many other challenges require immediate attention to reduce the risk of further pain of the pregnancy. Therefore, there is a need for restructuring the entire society, restructuring our hospitals, our educational institutions, our agriculture, our politics, our economics, restructuring the way we live and restructuring our mind. The rights of people must be protected, especially those in minority, the rights of women, the rights of Black people, the rights of religious minorities, the rights of children, the rights of disabled people, the rights of poor people, all must enjoy the greatest happiness possible.